It's Tuesday, March 28, 2023. Good morning and welcome to the morning news here on TV3 with me, Kwadwo Asidiba. Coming up this morning. In the bulletin, U.S. government commits $100 million to promote peace in West African sub-region. Also in the bulletin, President Kufuor's comment on the U.S. Vice President and her country's position on LGBTQI rights has attracted sharp condemnation from Ningo Prampram MP Sam George. MPs are returning to Parliament this morning to possibly consider 3 revenue bills government is seeking to pass for an IMF bailout 4 days after some NDC MPs defied party decision to approve President Kufuor's ministerial nominees. And later on the international front, 6 dead, including 3 children in Tennessee school shooting. Details of these and some other stories coming your way if you stay with us for the next 20 minutes. Don't go anywhere. We're on DSTV channel 279, also streaming across the world on Facebook at TV3 Ghana. The details now. The U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has announced a $100 million support for Benin, Ghana, Guinea, Kwadwo, and Togo to fight extremism and instability. She made this known at a joint press conference at the Jubilee House in Accra.
The African sub-region in recent years has been faced with a wave of terrorism. This has resulted in the death of hundreds of people and the displacement of millions of others.
The threats of violent extremism and instability, today I am pleased to announce $100 million in support of Benin, Ghana, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and Togo. Last week, President Joe Biden announced a strategic plan for coastal West Africa as part of the United States strategy to prevent conflict and promote stability. Today, funding and the announcement that I've just made will help implement that plan and will address security, governance, and development issues in the region.
He commended President Kufuor for the instrumental role he is playing to ensure stability in the region. President Kufuor lauded the support from the U.S. government.
Be in a position to resolve our own security problems ourselves, as much as possible without the intervention of foreign troops. The presence of Al-Qaeda in Ghana, I don't know. Formally, we don't have any information to that effect. It may well be that there are cells, etc., already in the country, but those are matters that the security agencies are very much on top of. And we're hoping that there will be no Al-Qaeda presence in Ghana. That has to be the wish of anybody who is a friend of this country and who wishes the Ghanaian people well. Thank you.
Still on Kamala Harris's visit, the U.S. Vice President says her country upholds the rights of all persons, including those of the LGBTQI community. And in response, the President of Ghana, President Nana Addo Dankwa Kufuor, said the proper sexual and Ghanaian family values bill aimed at criminalizing same-sex relationships and activities had been modified.
Shifting what has been the position of the United States all these years.
A great deal of work in my career has been to address human rights issues, equality issues across the board, including as it relates to the LGBT community. And I feel very strongly about the importance of supporting the freedom and supporting and fighting for equality among all people, and that all people be treated equally. I will also say that this is an issue that we consider, and I consider, to be a human rights issue, and that will not change.
President Kufuor is adamant Ghana has not passed any laws yet.
The bill is going through the Parliament. It's going through the Parliament. The Attorney General has found it necessary to speak to the committee about it regarding the constitutionality or otherwise of several of its provisions, and the Parliament is dealing with it. At the end of the process, I will come in. But in the meantime, the Parliament is dealing with it. And I have no doubt that the Parliament of Ghana will show, as it's done in the past, first of all, its sensitivity to human rights issues, as well as to the feelings of our population, and will come out with a responsible response.
Of Parliament for Nigo Pram, President Kufuor missed an opportunity to state in clear terms Ghana's positions on the matter. Well, he described the president's comments which suggest the anti-LGBTQI+ bill has been modified as false, adding that the president goofed.
That President Kufuor would have used this opportunity to send a clear message to the world and to the country that his fidelities to the Ghanaian people and to the Constitution of Ghana, the 1992 Constitution that he swore an oath to uphold, and would have sent a clear message that Ghana is not going to entertain any expressions of homosexuality. And then secondly, I expected that he would have shown, it was known that this would have been a topic, and I expected that he would have shown that he was on top of his brief. On the 2 points, President Kufuor goofed and failed. When the president says that failed to tell her point blank that Ghana is not going to listen to what she says. I mean, Mrs. Kamala Harris should be the last person to come and talk about human rights in Ghana. Barely 2 hours ago, in the country where she's vice president of the United States, a Ghanaian woman, a lady in her 20s, walked into a school with pits, shot and killed 3 school children and 3 adults. Those are the human rights of her country's citizens that Kamala Harris should be worried about. She's vice president of America, and on a daily basis, more people die from gun violence in the U.S. than malaria kills in Africa or in Ghana. And so Ghana's president should not be finding it difficult to tell her in her face, like other African presidents have, to even presidents of America, that look, my fidelity is to the Constitution of my country and not what you think. The United States is a coward country. Why didn't they issue threats to Qatar? Why did they not stop their U.S. male team from playing in Qatar? Why did they not issue sanctions against Qatar? Are they not trading with Saudi Arabia? Is Saudi Arabia not one of their biggest traders? Is the U.S. not selling arms? The U.S. sells over almost $1 trillion of military hardware to Qatar and Bahrain. Is it not hypocrisy? In those countries, homosexuality is punished by death. So why are they coming to flex their muscles on African countries that are saddled with poor leadership that has made us a poor countries?
Let's still stay with Sam George. He has been giving updates on the anti-LGBTQ+ bill. He says the Parliamentary Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs is expected to present its report on the anti-LGBTQ+ bill this week. The Nigo Pram lawmaker, who is one of the leading proponents of the bill, says the Attorney General approves of the bill in its current form.
A draft copy of the committee's report was shared with me and my colleagues from the committee chair. We've okayed it. I believe that before Parliament rises this week on Friday, before Friday, the report of the committee will be laid in the House. And once the report of the committee is laid, it will then open room for the second reading, which is the debate stage. I don't foresee that happening between now and Friday. What will happen between now and Friday, hopefully, is to lay the report. And then when Parliament comes for its next meeting, sometime I think end of June or July, we will then begin the debates for which is basically the main part that would lead to the votes on the bill.
Well, there was a press conference which touched on a lot more that had to do with the LGBTQI rights bill. As he has been the case with the whole trip in the U.S., Vice President of Africa, the shadow of China still hangs in within throughout. There's more in this report by my colleague Noble Crosby-Annan.
As U.S. presidential visits go, there have been many memorable ones in Ghana, often filling out large public squares with many happy faces and grand declarations.
The first century will be shaped by what happens not just in Rome or Moscow or Washington, but by what happens in Accra as well. We want to put more resources in the hands of those who need it.
These visits highlight for many experts an important fact that Ghana is a key ally to the United States of America, at least on the African continent. So, It is of little surprise that after years of a lull in U.S.-Africa relations during the Trump administration, and with Russia and particularly China strengthening their footprint on the continent, the U.S. has chosen Ghana to begin its latest charm offensive led by Vice President Kamala Harris.
Every country, when they work or invest outside their borders, it should be for their interest. And the United States knows that for countries on the African continent that are our allies, they can't be the allies we need them to be if they are in asymmetrical relationships with China or Russia.
China's name keeps coming up in the conversations about Harris's visit to Ghana, and it is easy to see why. The Asian giants have forged significant ties on the continent, offering long loans assistance, without some of what experts consider the stringent terms that comes with American assistance. Harris says her visit is more about U.S. relations with Ghana and less about the strides China is making on the continent.
But the conversation was not about China as much as it is about the enduring and important direct relationship that the United States has with Ghana and with African nations. The relationship between the United States and this continent and African leaders is an important one.
Ghana's President Kufuor is keen to downplay the China factor in the conversation.
There may be an obsession in America about the Chinese activities on the continent, but there's no such obsession here. About China is one of the many countries with whom Ghana is engaged in the world. Your country is one of them. Virtually all the countries of the world are friends of Ghana, and we have relations in varying degrees of intensity with all of them. Our relationship with America is a relationship that has been forged over several decades.
So what exactly is in this for Ghana?
This trip and this relationship, yes, we are concerned with security. We are concerned with what is happening on the globe as a whole. We are clear-eyed about that. But this trip is motivated by the importance of the direct relationship between the United States and Ghana, and as I travel the continent, those countries as well.
The Vice President and I discussed at length how to boost further our political and economic relations, cultural and people-to-people exchanges, as well as our cooperation at the multilateral level. Our deliberations also centered on driving investment opportunities, domestic and foreign, into our two countries and the need for enhanced cooperation and partnership in our development efforts.
Not everyone is so hopeful, though. Some are unconvinced the visit by Harris will yield immediate dividends. Noble Crosby Annan, TV3 News, Accra.
The U.S. says it will support Ghana and its engagement with the International Monetary Fund to secure a bailout. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has urged Ghana's bilateral creditors to offer debt the relief and assured the America's support in seeing Ghana get an IMF Executive Board approval in time.
I recognize the challenges Ghanaians are facing, especially in the wake of a global pandemic and the disruptions caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We welcome Ghana's commitment to reforming its economy to deliver sustainable and inclusive growth. We support Ghana's engagement with the IMF and will continue to push for all bilateral creditors to provide meaningful debt reduction for countries that need it, including Ghana. We must work together as an international community to ease the debt burden that is facing far too many countries. It is critical to do so, to build long-term economic growth and prosperity, and to increase U.S. investment, a key priority for our administration, and in particular, private sector investment.
This morning, the Vice President will deliver a speech to young audience and visit the Cape Coast slave castle to speak about the brutality of slavery and the African diaspora. On Wednesday, she will meet with women entrepreneurs in Accra to discuss the economic empowerment of women. It is expected that she will announce a series of continent-wide public and private sector investment to help close the digital gender divide and empower women economically. Vice President Harris will then travel to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania before concluding her trip to Lusaka, Zambia and Zambia. The visit marks the fifth major trip from a senior administration official since the summit, following visits by Secretary Yellen, Ambassador Thomas Greenfield, the First Lady and Secretary Blinken. Senior U.S. administration official says the Vice President is visiting these three countries where the governments are investing in their democracies, specifically at a time where we know there's a global democratic recession. It's been 4 days after some NDC MPs defied party decision to approve President Kufuor's nominees to the disappointment of the party and many Ghanaians. The MPs are returning to Parliament this morning to possibly consider 3 revenue bills government is seeking to pass for an IMF bailout. The bills are the Income Tax Amendment Bill number 2, 2022, Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2022, Growth and Sustainability Levy Bill 2022. They are key revenue measures the IMF is seeking from Ghana before a bailout. The minorities say they will reject these bills despite what the party describes as sabotage and betrayal. The NDC has already instituted a probe to fish out its members who cross carpets to vote for the approval of the ministerial nominees, while pressure is mounting on the MPs themselves to render a public apology for their actions. All eyes would be in the House of the Legislature as the MPs return to Parliament today. Dr. Kwabena Dufour, aspiring presidential candidate of the National Democratic Congress NDC, will be at the NDC national headquarters today at 10 a.m. to honor an invitation by the party's presidential elections vetting committee. The former Central Bank Governor and Finance Minister will be accompanied by members of the campaign team. Trust us to bring you all the updates at exactly 10 a.m. from the party's headquarters in Adabrakwa. Meanwhile, the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, has called on government to stop the introduction of what it describes as obnoxious taxes, arguing that businesses are already overburdened with high taxes and interest rate. First Vice President of GUTA, Clement Boateng, says nuisance taxes are creeping back in various forms, suffocating businesses and throwing many of their members out of businesses.
What we are saying is that businesses are already suffering, businesses are bleeding, and so therefore we are not in favor of government, laying this bill before Parliament for consideration. Already, just this year, that VAT was increased to 15%. So if you add the COVID levy of 1%, national health insurance of 2.5%, get fund of 2.5%. Now VAT is about 22%, which is already adding costs to doing business because it has a cascading effect on businesses. Just this evening, the policy rate has been increased. An additional 150 basis, has been added, which has gone up to 29.5, percent. Not to talk about the numerous levies and taxes that we are paying at the port. So businesses are really suffering, and so therefore we don't see the need, for government, to lay this bill before Parliament for consideration. Government must try as much as possible, to find other means of raising, revenue to meet its obligations, but not to always look at the port and try to burden, the business community. It is not fair. It is not fair. So we are appealing to parliamentarians not to consider this bill at all, and even to pass it, because if Parliament pass this bill and it's implemented, it is going to add an additional cost to businesses, and so therefore it's consumers and customers that are going to suffer. Government must try as much as possible to cut down its expenditure. Government, must try as much as possible to come out with new measures by trying to, rope in a lot more people to widen the tax nets.
Let's turn our attention to sports. The Black Stars may not have secured all 3 points in their encounter with Angola in Luanda on Monday, but head coach Chris Hughton is full of praise for his squad's fighting spirit. In a post-match interaction with journalists, Chris said he was happy with the 4 points in the 2 legs. He was, however, disappointed about the penalty awarded to Palancas Negras.
We are very happy to have 4 points from the 2 games. We wanted to win the game. You have to approach every game to win it, and sometimes you have a setback, and the penalty was for us disappointing, but we reacted really well.
To some international news now, 6 people, including 3 children, have been killed in a shooting in Nashville, Tennessee, according to local authorities. The city's fire department said 3 were multiple patients from an incident at the local school. Nashville police said they had engaged and killed the shooter, who was described as a teenage female. Police are still working to identify the victims and the culprits. At a news conference, police spokesperson Don Aaron confirmed the death, including 3 children, 3 staff members, and the shooter. 1 police officer was wounded by cut glass while responding to the incident, police said. The suspect was carrying 2 assault-type rifles, and at least 1 pistol has been recovered at the scene. The identity of the shooter remains unclear. That's all we have for you this morning. My name is Godwin Asidiwa. The show continues with Bella Mundi and Roland Walker. Good morning.